right, I'm going.
Ma'am, no.
Ma'am,
step over here.
Sir, please.
334 Central. Can you send me 94?
Please don't. Please don't. Hey, hey, hey! Do not address me. Do not.
Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. Our case today comes to us from a YouTube channel called Police Watch, and it depicts a DUI arrest and use of force against a woman in Charlotte County, Florida, after she was reported to have left a bar in an extremely intoxicated state. Shocker. And was preparing to drive away in a vehicle when the officer approached her. Now, I've edited out all but the portions relevant to our discussion, but you should head over to their channel to watch the video in its entirety and give them credit for sharing it. Trust me, y'all are going to want to stick around for the whole video on this one because there are parts of it that are pretty comedic, including what is likely the lowest speed foot pursuit in recorded history. Let's take a look.
Hey, ma'am. Go ahead and turn that off for me. Go ahead and turn the car off for me. How about?
Yeah.
So why are you driving if you've been drinking?
I'm going home right now.
Okay. Well, I can tell you're extremely intoxicated right now.
Can you?
You're slurring your speech. You're here at a bar. They're telling me that you're stumbling out of here. You can barely park your car.
They tell you that?
They're the one that called me.
Talk to them?
They're the one that called me. You can barely stand right now.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Are you sure?
I am sure.
Let's go talk to them.
No, we're not going to go talk to them. We're not going to do that.
All right, I'm going.
Ma'am, no.
Ma'am,
step over here.
Sir, please.
334 Central. Can you send me 94?
Please don't. Please don't. Hey, hey, hey! Do not address me. Do not. I'm not doing
Stop
anything.
or you're going to get tased.
Stop! Stop! I'm going to drop myself.
334. Whoever's in the house.
Help! I'm going to stop myself. Stop! You're stop! Stop! Why are you doing this?
Go down. On the ground.
Why are you doing this? Why?
Roll over. Roll over.
Why are you doing this? Why? Why are you doing this? Help me! Help me! I love my community and I do everything I can for them. And look at you. You're out here doing nothing for nothing. Help me! Help me!
Go on, stand up.
Help me!
Sit up.
Yeah.
Roll on your butt.
Help me!
What's going
Help
on?
me!
Hey.
Help me!
What's your name?
Help me! Help me!
What do you need?
Help me! Help me! Help me! Help me!
she wasn't driving?
No, hell no! I'm walking home from my mother.
She
And you put it in me.
No, what's
she
your
had
name?
the car started when I walked up.
Help
Had her
me.
turn it
I
off,
didn't
had her
do
step out.
shit to him. I didn't do shit to him.
Take a
He
deep breath.
attacked
Slurred
me.
speech. I explained why I'm here.
Yeah.
She started to run away from me. I told her to stop. Didn't stop.
Exactly.
Okay.
Grabbed onto
do me
her.
a favor, take a deep breath. All right.
You
lean back. You lean back.
Help me. Whatever you guys
Talk to
need.
Sergeant. Talk to her.
There you go.
Where's your car?
Go figure that.
There.
Mine's over
Take
there
me
with
to the
You got gloves?
Exactly.
No, I know.
Whatever you gotta do.
Now, I have to admit that I'm glad this lady didn't get a chance to drive away, but I also have to acknowledge that there's at least a 6 out of 10 chance that I would have fallen down trying to just walk between those parking curbs while being completely sober. So the fact that she shredded those things like an Olympic downhill skier in the condition she was in tells me she probably would have made it home just fine were she able to get away. But setting aside the possibility that she's more coordinated being hammered than I am just existing on the combination of gravity and air, the legal issue that presents itself here is whether or not a person can be charged with DUI if they're not actually driving. The answer is yes. In most states, a person can be charged with DUI if they are driving or have physical control of the vehicle. Now, this case happened in what I've come to suspect is the DUI capital of the world, Florida. So we need to look at Florida law to see what it says about physical control. Now, one of the ways that the court tries to help juries understand the law is by issuing what are called standard jury instructions or pattern jury instructions. And that usually helps break down complicated legal definitions so that they're easy to understand. The standard jury instructions for DUI in Florida as it relates to actual physical control are as follows. Actual physical control of a vehicle means the defendant must be physically in or on, in the case of, say, a motorcycle or a four-wheeler or a boat, the vehicle, and have the capability to operate the vehicle regardless of whether he or she is actually operating the vehicle at the time. But before we get into whether or not there was physical control, the first question we need to answer is whether the original detention was lawful in itself. So you have to remember that reasonable suspicion is based on the facts known to the officer at the time of the encounter. And according to the Supreme Court case of Florida versus JL, unsubstantiated cause alone are not enough to support reasonable articulable suspicion necessary for an investigatory detention. So what does this officer know at the time of the encounter? Well, we know there was a call placed indicating that there was a female leaving a bar in a very intoxicated state. We see that there is a bar, or what looks to be a bar, called Charlie's Pub, and you see a vehicle, a black SUV with a female at the driver's seat. If you look closely, you see a parking curb with the name Charlie's Pub on the parking curb, and this vehicle is in the spot. There's nobody else around, at least as far as we can tell from the body cam footage. Now, I don't actually think at this point he has reasonable suspicion necessary to physically detain her yet, but when he approaches, she has her hands on the wheel, the music up, and the engine is running because he tells her to turn it off and step out, and she complies. So her turning off the vehicle and turning down the music exhibits that she is probably in physical control, at least as it relates to the elements of Florida law. And he tells her to step out, which she does, and once that happens, her condition becomes pretty obvious. Her speech is very slurred and she's unsteady on her feet, so her demeanor kind of helps him to substantiate the details of the call. Reasonable suspicion, in my opinion, at this point is met for an investigatory detention. But had she rolled up the window and refused to speak to him, it's very likely he would not have had reasonable suspicion to detain her at that point. There was a recent case in Florida in 2019 that sort of illustrates this. The case was called Department of Highway Safety versus Morrical, where the Supreme Court of Florida struck down a license suspension for a driver convicted of DUI because the officer didn't have reasonable articulable suspicion of criminal activity at the time of the detention. In that case, Morrical was parked in a vehicle at the Pep Boys parking lot in the early morning hours with the lights on and the engine running. He was asleep in the front passenger seat, and he actually had his pants and underwear pulled all the way down to his ankles. The officer peered into the vehicle, noticed his condition, and called for backup. A second officer arrived, parked his vehicle behind Morrical's and sort of blocked him in, and the first officer, without doing anything else, opened the door to the vehicle, which caused Morrical to wake up. The officer then asked Morrical out of the car, he complied, and the officer conducted a standard DUI investigation and subsequently arrested him for DUI. Now, the court actually said that when the officer opened Morrical's door, he didn't have reasonable suspicion that a crime was occurring. Therefore, the subsequent DUI investigation was without the requisite suspicion needed for an investigatory detention. So just being naked in your car is not all that weird in Florida, and apparently it's not enough. And, you know, that's good for the general public, I guess. So in this case, we do actually have a call with matching details, but there's still at least a 50-50 chance that had she rolled up the window and not talked to him, that the court would have later found that he lacked the requisite reasonable suspicion to actually detain her at that point. But she didn't do that, and she gave him everything he needed to legally justify her detention, so that's why we're here. Now, the dark part of me has to admit that I thoroughly enjoyed watching the first part of this interaction because the lady is so indignant while being questioned by the police, and she is quite obviously shit-hammered. She reminds me of the girl several years back who was filmed directly after coming out of like having her wisdom teeth removed or oral surgery. You guys might remember it. And she was talking about how she wanted to be Nicki Minaj when she woke up, but she woke up and she was still white, and that was disappointing, and how she wanted to meet and befriend Ellen DeGeneres. And she's just really pissy about it when she's talking to her boyfriend or family member or whoever's filming. Well, in case you don't remember, here's a clip of that.
So you just want to go on her show to get a check?
Oh, I want to go on a show to meet her.
And be her friend?
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Doubt it.
Now, in fairness to this officer, the thumbnail and the title of this video do indicate there's excessive force, and I believe there was excessive force. So I just want to say that his initial arrest of this girl is not what I found excessive. I have to give him credit for the way that he pursued and initially dealt with this. She was obviously not much of a physical threat, and he treated her accordingly. He didn't rough her up, and he only used mild empty hand controls to get her in cuffs. But an interesting thing happened to the female officer we saw in the beginning assisting the primary officer with the arrest. You'll remember that she initially displayed like the patience of Mother Teresa and was almost comforting this lady as she was trying to get her under control. As you'll see, she is later very short on that level of patience, and this video takes a much darker turn and becomes unreasonable as it relates to the force used against this lady for very unjustifiable reasons. Let's get back to it.
Hey, you ain't taking my purse. You better leave that on me.
I got it. I'll search. I got it.
Yes. Leave my the on me.
We're just gonna sit. Relax. Calm down for us.
We're taking
I
it
will come. No, you ain't taking
Don't
you police officer.
you about what you're doing, okay?
All right, I fully thought about what I'm doing, and I'm totally fucking look at y'all, you little fucking pigs, you fucking pigs, motherfuckers. That's what the fuck y'all are.
You want some new reports?
No, you pig.
Are you willing to?
You fucking pig ass.
Hold on.
You better shut the fuck up, you little.
That's not happening.
You little pig ass.
Hold on.
Girl.
In the
Pig ass. That's what the they are. The fucking pig ass. Look at him. The pig ass. Look at him. Look at him. Look. Ah!
Don't you try and bite me.
Resisting.
Oh, look at you. Bitch, get the fuck off me.
No, stop. Until you calm down, you're staying right where you're at. Because we're not going to get hurt. So whenever
Wait
you're
till
done,
I get to my neighborhood, you little bitch ass. They're gonna fucking love you, bitches. They're gonna fucking love you. No, you ain't searching.
well, here,
Get
Shelly's
the
here.
fuck off of me.
Don't resist. Don't resist. Just stop.
Ain't nobody resisting you,
You are.
stupid.
Stop and trying to resist.
Get the fuck off my fucking hands, you stupid.
Don't skid. Don't do that.
Bro, fucking kill you, you little bitch.
You're okay.
Ah, you guys love
Let me
yourselves, don't you? You love yourselves, don't you? F***ing love yourselves, you little dumbass.
We're good. We'll just get a plan and we'll put her in the car.
I'll have this side, you can have that side, and then two on the legs, and we'll just go straight in.
Oh yeah, is that good for you, you dumb motherfucker?
We'd rather not pick you up and put you in the vehicle.
Yeah, shut the f*** up, you little.
Let's just wait for her.
Yep.
All right, watch her face, Sherry.
I got it.
Sherry
I
trying to
got it.
bite
Yep,
you.
no, she ain't gonna have it. 3. Lift her up.
Dumb motherfuckers, I swear to God, if
I can't get on the other side. The bricks are there.
So, in my mind, what's going on here is that we have a secured suspect who is admittedly mildly resistant and militant in her opinion of the police. But this is a good example of how cops get singularly focused and lose sight of what's actually important in the face of defiance, and contempt of cop becomes the most important charge to consider. They decide they need to remove her purse. They're not wrong here. She could tangle herself in the straps and get strangled during transport. It's a safety concern potentially. They need to search it, and it's certainly a liability issue. But in the process of trying to figure out how they're going to get it off of her without removing the cuffs, she begins to call them pigs. And you can physically see a shift in this female officer's demeanor. Full of patience before, shortly after the lady becomes verbally abusive, you can almost physically see this female officer's 1-amp fuse explode into the atmosphere, and she starts jerking on the lady while she's still in cuffs, and she pulls her to the ground, causing her to land face first into the blacktop. In my opinion, this is the moment that force became excessive. I believe under the Graham factors provided by Graham versus Connor, it was wholly unjustified to treat her this way under the circumstances. So remember that the Graham factors ask us to look at whether a reasonable officer would have done the same thing under the same circumstance. The first thing it looks at is the severity of crime at issue. Here we have a misdemeanor DUI and resisting arrest. We're not dealing with a felony, we're not dealing with violence, we're not dealing with anything other than a simple misdemeanor DUI. The second thing it asks us to do is consider whether there's an immediate threat to the safety of the officers. That factor is very clear. She's handcuffed and she poses no serious threat whatsoever. Third, it asks us to consider whether the person was actively resisting or attempting to flee. Well, again, she's handcuffed. At least at first, while she's standing there, she's not kicking or doing anything except using big scary words that hurt the officer's feels. Previously, she was unsecured, treated mildly, and handcuffed by a single officer while the same female officer tried to verbally de-escalate the situation. Now, she's in handcuffs, she's pinned to a patrol vehicle by two male officers. The female officer is directly behind her, trying to do something with the cuffs, probably attempting to remove them so they can remove the purse. And then there's another male directly at the 6 o'clock position from the female, standing at the ready. She's not kicking, she's standing. She might be actively resisting with her upper body, but again, controlled by two male officers and pinned to the patrol vehicle. So, for the reasons we discussed earlier, the female officer loses her temper, starts jerking around on her, and begins to pull her and slam her to the ground, taking the males with her, and then they end up cutting the strap anyway. So why not just do that in the first place? I mean, what do you guys think this female officer would rather have happen? She'd rather pay for the purse strap because she destroyed it maybe unlawfully or improperly? Or do you think she'd rather get sued, lose her, or potentially go to federal prison for excessive force and deprivation of rights under the color of law? I think we know that the answer to that is obvious. It's obvious to anyone looking at this situation objectively that she had enough, she lost her cool, and took not only this lady, but both of her male partners to the ground just to escalate a situation that didn't need more escalation. My closing argument, and I reiterate this all the time, this is what you get when your agency and your training protocols do not teach you how to kill your ego in policing. I've said this for years. Officers receive just enough training on the Constitution to get by and just enough tactical defensive training to do the same. And it creates what I call the triangle of incompetence. Yes, I know that that is a genius term. No, you may not steal it because it's mine and it's now forever documented. Because I'm a wordsmith, I'm a lyrical genius. If I wasn't so uncoordinated, I would have been a rapper, but I'm not. But really, you got a triangle here because what you have is you have officers on the one hand who have no foundational understanding of legal or constitutional authority, and they end up substituting their ego as the source of authority. And then on the other hand, on the other leg of the triangle, you have a lack of tactical or physical ability to handle themselves on the street. This and their ego involved causes this leg of the triangle to push towards the center, and this physical aspect has to meet it there, and it's inadequate. So what you have is you have a single point on the top of the triangle where the escalation requires physical competence, and because they don't have that and they don't know how to handle themselves physically, the encounter inevitably escalates to a degree that they can't physically deal with, and that's the point of the triangle. So when the encounter becomes more than the officer knows what to do with, we get a freak out, and the answer becomes a premature and unnecessary transition to excessive and often deadly force in order to get control of a situation that their incompetence forced out of control in the first place. This is why I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for defensive tactics. The Jaycis have an incredible program called Jayci Survival Tactics. I'm actually a level 2 law enforcement instructor in this program. And what I love about it is that it teaches de-escalation from the beginning. It teaches a de-escalated mindset. And it offers so much in the way of changing the way law enforcement officers think about their encounters with people on the street. Whenever you walk into a situation and you think about the use of force continuum, officers are trained to think, if this person is doing A, what is the most amount of force that I can use to bring them down? So what we do is we start at the ceiling, and then we're standing on the second floor to stomp this situation down. I'll give you an example that Henry Gracie mentioned, and it was really genius. What Henry says is that, like, if you were in an argument with your spouse, you wouldn't say, what is the loudest I could raise my voice and the most aggressive that I could be to try to calm this situation down? That's not how you would think. What the Jayci Survival Tactics course and Jiu-Jitsu in general does is it gives you a bunch of tools within the space of the room so that you can start at the floor and work your way up like rungs of a ladder instead of starting up here at the ceiling. If you start at the ceiling, you cannot be surprised when you have to bust through the ceiling in order to bring the situation down. But if you start down here, maybe you use this level of force and this level, and incrementally, maybe you end the encounter way down here in the middle of the room instead of way up here into deadly force world where you can't do anything except kill somebody. All this lady had to do was to step back at the male officer covering her 6 and say, hey man, can you jump in? I need a second to cool off. But it was more important to her in that moment to show the lady who the boss was, and that's why we are here. Every officer in this country needs to be taught de-escalation and physical training to include Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and control tactics that do not have this, okay, if he does this, I'm going to go here, because you never get to come back down from those escalated levels of force in most cases. In my opinion, this was not a justifiable amount of force to use on a handcuffed detainee. My argument is that if she was so out of control that she had to be taken to the ground, then the first thing that should have happened was that the idea to remove the handcuffs should have been immediately abandoned, and a coordinated, controlled takedown should have been implemented where all 4 officers get a body part and try to control her descent to the ground so that she could be lowered and not injured. There were 4 officers there. The only reason for this was ego and a lost temper. All right, that's it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. Please remember to like and subscribe. Check out the other videos on the channel and leave some comments on them too. Until I see you again, take care of yourselves. Always record your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.